All right, we're going to do a quick 5-minute audit of this Google business profile. So this is a new client. I'm going to be helping them with their local and on-site SEO to hopefully, grow their printing business. So right now you can look at it. It looks like the profile strength's good. Don't base your whole assumption off of this. This is just something where Google is, kind of more so convincing you to use their products. So what we'll do, typically first is just look, how is it structured? What do we, notice in this right-hand column here? First and foremost, obviously we don't have a physical location right now. That is currently being added because we're trying to do a more of an aggressive local SEO strategy as opposed to an on-site strategy. Right now, having a good printing business in Utah is super important. So we want to make sure that we are optimizing stuff for that. We have a lot of big businesses here in Utah. And so, if we want people to trust a smaller mom and pop shop, we want to be as aggressive as we possibly can to hopefully push them up the ranks. In this circumstance, because it's technically an online business, we don't necessarily have a lot of stuff where they have a physical location that people can come to. We want to make sure that for the business, we are, having the website linked. We're having different things where it's showcasing the products. In this case, we would, set up a merchant account for Google and make sure that the Shopify account is connected to that. And so that way it showcases our products and, we can get fully optimized for what Google wants us to show. A lot of the times you see businesses where, they just kind of are lackluster with what they showcase. Google will tell you what they want you to show. If you just follow their principles and you just kind of follow what Google tells you to do, 9 times out of 10, it's going to help grow your business on their, platform. And so in this case, we want to basically just follow every piece of content we possibly can that Google will offer us. In this circumstance, if we look at the actual profile here, we can see, once we get in here, it'll show us a little bit more information on what has currently been added, what needs to be added, and just kind of, furthering the business from there. Not sure. There we go. So right now, we look at the business name, we look at the contact information, everything else. They have a very thorough description here, which is awesome. I probably wouldn't change too much other than maybe just optimizing for some keywords we want to target. For the business category, right now I can see his primary categories for sign shop. Technically, he's a printing business, so I would switch that over to print shop or something a little bit more detailed for all the services he offers, not necessarily just signs. If signs are something that he wants to focus on and that's kind of his main business category, then obviously we'll leave that and we'll keep, optimizing further off of it. But right now you can see he has as many different categories as Google will allow him based on his business niche. We'll probably go through and see if there's some additional categories we can add here. Google will give you up to 10. So you might as well do as many different categories as you possibly can. I'd probably remove marketing agency since he's technically not a marketing agency. He does do some design and branding work, so I'll leave those two. But marketing is maybe one I wouldn't necessarily leave on here, primarily just because he doesn't offer traditional marketing as far as advertising, social media, that sort of thing. So that's maybe something I would switch out. But if it's something where he does do a little bit of that, then okay. So the other thing is, making sure we have an opening date here. This is super, super important for Google. It just helps further trust. If you notice a lot of, local businesses, when you type in Google Maps, it'll showcase their opening date or how long they've been in business. So that's something we want to make sure we add. Having a chat service or something along those lines is important. And then obviously optimizing all of his social profiles. So if he has TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, anything like that, we want to fill out as much information as we possibly can. The more trust you build with Google, the more trust you're going to build with your potential clients. Other thing is, just making sure we have a good service area set up there as well. He's based in Ogden, so we'll leave that, but I probably won't further out any other service areas in most cases, just because a lot of his business is done online. For services, you can see here that none of these have been filled out. So one thing we want to make sure that we're doing as we're optimizing these business profiles for local searches is adding as many services that are offered under your category as possible. Obviously, we're going to switch over his primary category since he's technically more than just a sign shop. And so we'll go through and make sure that this is all set up properly. Added a bunch of different services underneath here that are optimized for specific keywords for the local search intent, but also just for online traffic. Right now you can see his one category that is filled out is his marketing agency category. In most circumstances, I like I said, I'd probably switch this one around, just because it's not as pertinent. But you can see here, no descriptions, no pricing, that sort of thing. In a business like this, we want to make sure we're filling out every piece of content we possibly can that Google will give us. So that way we're ranking properly and we're building trust with potential clients. But yeah, that's the only other thing I'd say is maybe just fixing his reviews there. Everything else is looking good. I don't really see a ton of other information or changes we need to make. Other than just making sure we have all the social profiles. We're adding consistent updates at least once a week, and then in the photos, we want to make sure we have at least 50 as a basis. For whatever reason, Google bases trust and credibility if a business has at least 50 photos on their business profile. I won't necessarily geotag these per se, just because nowadays it's not as necessary to geotag photos. Um, According to ChatGPT, it is. So, we might do that depending on what we notice as far as like the aggressiveness of other businesses in the industry. If we're trying to, be more aggressive than them, we might geotag some of the photos and write different EXIF files based on that. But for right now, the biggest thing is maybe just changing the file names for the photos, and then just being more consistent about adding at least 1 to 2 photos a week. But yeah, that's really the main thing I would say. Obviously, getting the address listed is important. I'm not going to show you guys that just for his sake, but that's the main thing I would do to optimize this business profile and go through and change things. If you have questions or you want an audit of your business profile, shoot me a DM and just let me know.